Hello and welcome to this little 5-minute flare. My name is Timothy Anderson and I'm here to chat with you about how much we matter as activities professionals. And the time that I'm recording this, it is the time of year of Activities Professionals Week, and so I wanted to kind of maybe finish that week off by putting together this little flare. And I want you to know that as activities professionals, sometimes it's not obvious to us how much of a difference we make, but that we do make a difference. And I want to share with you two of my personal stories that really reminded me how much the work that we do matters. And the first was actually when I first began in healthcare. I was a CNA in training, and I was working on my practicum in a skilled nursing community, and I was assigned to work with a older woman who was bedbound in her room, and she was nonverbal. She could make eye contact, but for the most part, she really didn't communicate that much. And every day I would go in and I would take care of this woman, and I would get her up and get her dressed and bathed, and then I would let the other CNAs who were fully certified come and help me put her in with the Hoyer lift and get her into her chair for the day. And throughout the conversation, throughout the time I was giving care, I would have conversations with her. And they were one-sided, and there were, the staff had told me when I first started that, she probably won't respond. She really can't speak anymore. But I said, okay, well, I'm taking care of you, so I'm going to have conversations with you. And even if they're one-sided, they're one-sided. And so I continued to have these conversations for about a week. And we talked about, I talked about random things and just, let her know, I would give her choices and she would nod her head if she, if she could make the choice and whatnot. And so in probably about the middle of my second week there, because we were doing a 2-week stint in training, I went in to give her a bath or bed bath, and I'd found that the CNAs had already actually gotten her up, and she was having breakfast, and I walked in and I said good morning to her because I always did, and the other two CNAs were in the room as well, and she turned her head to me. The resident turned her head over to me and said good morning. And I said, good morning, how are you? And she said, I am well. How are you? And that was the time that I noticed that, because she didn't say anything else after that, but I noticed that just taking that conversation and just being there and talking to her, eventually it it motivated her enough to turn and speak to me. And so from then on, I felt that conversation was the most important thing. And so that was something that will stick with me forever. And the second thing that I wanted to share, the second story, was I was sitting next to a resident. This was when I was an activities director. And I was sitting next to a resident who was getting close to the end. And she wasn't talking much at that point, but she was there and she seemed to be perceiving the world. And she and I had developed a very close relationship, like we do. Because anybody who's watching this probably knows we develop pretty powerful relationships with our residents. And so I sat there and I held her hand and we sat for a good 15 minutes or so. And when it looked like she had calmed down a little bit and she was definitely struggling earlier, I went up to her and I didn't know, she was kind of asleep. I didn't know how much she could really understand me, but I just told her that I loved her very quietly. It was very, very almost silently. I don't even know how much of a word I made. But at that moment, and I said I would see her later. At that moment, she took a breath and she responded, I love you too. So that reminded me that no matter what they're going through, believe it or not, they can hear you. What we do matters. And I want everyone to know that because it's so important that we as activities professionals realize how much of an impact we make. And thank you for this.